Hello, everybody. This is your neighborhood friendly cosplaying goof, Jesse Whiteear, formerly of the Needless Potatoes podcast, but we're starting a new adventure. So, death to Needless Potatoes podcast. I am joined by the illustrious Cody Baggerly, the powerful Ian Cooper, and the almighty, and some would say immortal, Fragmented Luchador, aka Chris Lawson. This is a new venture for everybody. We're doing a wrestling podcast. It's three ref, where we go back in time and try to discover wrestling's hidden treasures and do a deep dive on subjects. On this first episode, though, we're going to go ahead and just get into how we all started watching wrestling, maybe how we became, how we've known each other, just that whole bit. So I think I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to your friend and mine, Cody Baggerly.
All right. Well, as some of you know me, the Bags rather than Cody Baggerly. But I got into wrestling a little bit later than most people did. I would say I was a little bit older. Um, it was in 2007 too, so I did not actually grow up watching the Attitude Era like a lot of fans our age. What actually got me into wrestling, of all things, is one of the most absurd storylines that I've ever seen on Monday Night Raw to this day still, and that says a lot. That was actually Vince McMahon's assassination, if you guys remember that.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't the assassination itself that got my interest. I remember flipping through the channels, catching part of that, thinking it was absurd, but kind of curious how they were going to convince the audience that it was real. So the next week I tuned in. I remember that episode opened with a segment between Mick Foley, Bobby Lashley, John Cena, Randy Orton, and King Booker. So this was King Booker. This is 2007. This is King Booker. Mick Foley made a very short-lived comeback that summer. But I remember watching the segment, and automatically I was a fan of Mick Foley, who I recognized but had never really watched. And it just caught my interest. So I ended up watching the whole episode. I thoroughly enjoyed everything except for everything to do with Vince McMahon's assassination. I still thought that was absurd. But I was starting to get hooked. And then the next week, I tuned in to see where it was going. And unfortunately, that was the Chris Benoit tribute episode.
Oh,
the day that they had found out that he was dead. Or it might have been the day after, I can't remember. But no one knew exactly what happened yet.
Yeah.
So I watched that episode start to finish. I remember watching Chris Benoit's Royal Rumble match. I remember seeing him eliminate the Big Show. And again, I knew who the Big Show was. I was kind of on the outside of wrestling, but I recognized some of the big names.
Oh, yeah.
But I watched that. Then it had the triple threat at WrestleMania 20 with Benoit, Michaels, Triple H.
Yep.
And I still credit that match with making me fall in love with professional wrestling.
That's
it was
fair.
that match.
That was a good
And
match.
it was fantastic. And I automatically became a fan of Benoit. Finished out that episode. 24 hours later, I found out not a good idea to be a fan of Benoit anymore.
Yeah.
So I kind of got into it at a weird time when a lot of people, especially in the news and the press, were trying to scare fans away from wrestling and exploiting what happened to Benoit and his family. But I was hooked, and I've been a fan ever since. I still do enjoy a Benoit match. Can't really call him a favorite of anything anymore, but I can't help those matches. They're still quality. I will say, though, that I am not the biggest fan of pro wrestling today, of the content that comes out now. I know you guys are to some degree, and there is still things that I find that I really do enjoy. I Yesterday I caught up on the Gunther and Chad Gable matches.
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
them. But over the past couple of years, I have started deep diving into old school wrestling. Years ago, I tried out the Attitude Era stuff. I found what I like there and everything, but I never went farther back. So the past couple of years, I've been trying to deep dive into more of the early days of WCW, some old school NWA from the 80s, some Mid-South wrestling. And I've recently started picking up books about professional wrestling in the very beginning, the late 1800s, early 1900s, what led into Strangler Lewis, guys like that.
Wow.
So as I've lost a little bit of my interest for modern wrestling, I have really started to deep dive into where wrestling began and then how it became what it is today. So that's more of my interest now,
That's pretty cool.
specifically the 80s. But
Yeah.
so that's me. That's how I got into wrestling for the most part. And that's kind of where my interest in wrestling is right now.
That's good. I guess I can go. I'll go next since we'll show. I'm, as y'all know me, I'm Ian Cooper. A lot of people around town know me. I'm pretty much everybody's not neighborhood goofball like you, Jesse, but just if you know me, I've been off and on here for the last 25 years. Met Cody through friends. I've met Jesse through friends and things, and hopefully eventually we'll meet the famous luchador Chris eventually in time. I've been a fan. I watched wrestling and I saw what it was I was 6 or 7. I really didn't know it, but I kind of knew who Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage and kind of who the Ultimate Warrior was. Didn't really understand what it was because I was at a cousin's house or something, but I got into wrestling like at the very tail end of. I moved here to Ada in July of '98, so real high of the Attitude Era. I didn't know really much about wrestling until one of the kids that I met at church. Was wearing a Sting shirt, and I was like, "What's that?" He goes, "Oh, who's this?" And I was like, "Yeah, who's Sting? I don't know who Sting is. Only heard of the musician Sting." And so anyway, he was telling me about wrestling, and he invited me to his house one night. And it was like the height of Austin was feuding with Undertaker, and The Rock was feuding with Triple H. All this like Attitude Era. I'm like, I've heard of this, but I'm like, this is so cool. This is something different because I was just moving from Midwest City, and I was going to be the new kid at school, so I didn't know what the cool things were here in Ada, so I needed to find something to latch onto. So I latched onto Attitude Era of wrestling. Also, when I started 7th grade, knowing more about pro wrestling, didn't know much about WCW because my friend showed me Monday Night Raw, so I wasn't really into the whole WCW thing. But like I said, I've been watching since July '98. Also been a fan for like a long time. Like also Cody, I like to deep dive into old school wrestling and stuff, but I'm also being a fan of more than just WWE now. I'm now open to watching AEW. There's a lot of things I prefer more of AEW than I do of WWE, but I still love them just as much. Got my kids into them, having 3 kids. I don't think they're all 3 going to ever be a big fan as I am, but I love it. It makes me happy when I going through crap. If I know that I have wrestling, I can watch that. I can talk to my friends about it, and I'm on Facebook pages. I have some things pages I follow in Reddit. I read the quote dirt sheets all the time, but it's really been a fun thing for me, a fun ride, and because I'm like wrestling's been there for me when it seems like I didn't have anybody else. I had wrestling to turn to, so it's a good escape and it's just a good wholesome thing for me to like. I know there's been absurd storylines like why was this a thing, or then like I'd be liking a wrestler that not many people were a fan of, or I've been fan for them a while and now they're just now becoming great when I knew they were great to begin with. And I like to support my guys. I also love going to, I've been to a couple indie shows that's really fun to go do. And if you never had a chance to go to an indie show, you should, because I went the last indie show I was maybe with all together with all the wrestlers there and the audience. There was probably maybe 50, 60 people, but so enjoyable. Get to know the wrestlers at the show. Take the time. I just recommend taking time after the show or before the show, getting to know and talk to the wrestlers, because these indie guys and gals, they just love talking. And I'm telling you, just try to pick their brain sometime, because they really love just getting to know them. So don't overstep your boundaries, but just really start to get to know them, because that's how I made some of my friends in the quote business, is just talking to them like they're just normal people. Can just treat them with respect and they'll treat you with respect. I guess that's my whole thing about wrestling, I guess.
So, it is I, the fragmented luchador, Chris Lawson. I guess I'll talk about, I'll just go off the cuff. You see, I was kind of raised on wrestling. You know, I was talking with you guys earlier, and I told you guys that the reason why my name is Christopher is because my mom's favorite wrestler was the gentleman Christopher Adams, you know, so wrestling was very prevalent in my life, whether it be my Nana watching it on the TV, watching anything from Mid-South, old Mid-South tapes, to WCW when it came on. I remember there'd be times where it was during the wars where they would play both at the same time, WCW and WWE, or F at the time. But they would have it literally on two different TVs in the house, and I would sit right in the middle to where I could see both. If I didn't like what was going on one, I'd look at the other one. And that's kind of like how I would do it back in the day. But what got me fully into wrestling was I was just sitting there watching it with my Nana, and then all of a sudden this guy comes out. He was a very dark character. He used to be very colorful and whatnot, and then all of a sudden I was really huge in the movie Crow, so when Sting came out dressed like the Crow, I was like, I don't know what this guy is, I don't know who he is, but I love him. So I just kind of like followed that fucking that freight train that was the Sting, you know, phenomenon, the phenom, or not what, icon, the icon that is Sting nowadays. But like really with me, like it just kind of went from there. So whether it was WCW or WWE or now AEW, I just kind of like latch on to certain characters. Like in WWE, it was in the back in the day, it was Chris Jericho, because again, my name was Chris. So I was like, his name's Chris too. I like him. And then when I got older, you know, I just kind of kept following those same ones, and then kind of latching on to other ones like The Shield with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, or now Jon Moxley.
I love Mox.
Yeah, Mox is he's a beast.
Yes.
But and then going back to WCW, one of my favorite lines was the whole Wolfpack NWO versus the white and black NWO, and then it was NWO versus WCW. I mean, I was all into it, whether it be video games, movies, like Ready to Rumble, or
such a cheesy movie. It's so good, though. So good.
It is, or even the Hogan films that he came out, where he was the, you know, like he like it was films where New Line Cinema had those series of films where it was Hogan was the guy, Mr. Nanny or Bionic Commando or whatever, you know. It was just
so bad, so good.
Yeah. But But like I said, my Nana was really the one that spearheaded my love for wrestling.
Oh, that's so cool. Having a grandma
Because
that loves wrestling.
Yeah, her favorite wrestler was Ric Flair. So it was Ric Flair and the Von Erich. So those three were three that I always loved from that Mid South era, those old school days of the territories, basically. So
For sure, man. Territory days are some of the best days.
yeah, and then nowadays, like I'm not able to actually watch wrestling, but I keep up with it via Twitter or Instagram or WWE, and I have Peacock, so I can watch any of the WWE pay-per-views that come along. So I just whatever storyline's going along, I only catch whatever's happening during the pay-per-view. I'm like, okay. So, but like I said, when it came to video games, I had almost every single video game. Like I currently have the most up-to-date WWE game. I plan to get the AEW Fight Forever game. So like I said, wrestling has always been there for me, and it's been something that's always helped me in my years through whatever I was going through. Wrestling was always there.
That's kind of cool. Same like me.
Yeah. And then, like, if I want to go into, like, maybe one of my favorite wrestling moments, Cody, you were talking about Chris Benoit. Like, one of my favorite modes was when they were doing the gear up to WrestleMania 20. It was the triple threat match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Freaking nobody thought that Chris Benoit was going to win that match, but when he did, it was literally like the crowd went fucking wild, and it was just one of the coolest things to see someone who had worked so goddamn hard in his career to finally become champion, and it happened. So tell me what you say. Well, say whatever you will, but one of my all-time favorite matches will always be that WrestleMania 20 triple threat match for the World Heavyweight Championship against Triple H, HBK, and Chris Benoit.
The thing I loved about that match is that he made Triple H tap out, because at that time I was a Benoit fan and my friend was a Triple H fan, and he made Triple H tap, and I'm like, it just made that icing on the cake, because Triple H always was winning everything, and to finally see Triple H tap, I was like, in your face! One of the best moments.
Yeah, it was the same for me with my brother. He was a huge Triple H fan. Like, I like Triple H, don't get me wrong. I liked all three of the people in that match.
I agree.
The one I wanted to win was Chris Benoit. So
I guess one of my easiest wrestlers I ever liked, I loved Scotty 2 Hotty. I don't know why.
Yeah.
He was just off the wall. So, like, I don't know. It just was Scotty 2 Hotty was just always so different kind of character. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
Also, having bleached blonde hair at that time,
I think for me, thanks Ian for adding that. Bleach blonde hair, everybody. Just in case you didn't hear. I'll go ahead and pause real quick. If anyone wants to get anything in real quick.
I'm good.
Okay, everybody, shut the fuck up. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Went heel mode there for a little bit. No, totally kidding, everybody. But I think for me, wrestling started like 96. So I remember I was so I grew up Mormon, for anyone listening. So, I didn't have, we weren't like a cult or anything like that. I went to I remember this kid from church. He liked wrestling. So he would tell me about it and stuff. And this was like the beginning of 96. So he actually was like, hey, my brother recorded this tape. If you want to borrow it, here's this tape. Check it out. And it was actually WrestleMania 13. Ooh. So, some of the first matches I watched were like Bret Hart versus Stone Cold and Undertaker versus Psycho Sid and and all that stuff. Yeah, all that stuff. So I was just like just so enthralled. And I think there was something about, and of course, I love all those guys and everything, but there was something about like when I saw the look, how, he carried himself. This guy's super serious. He's got the long, black hair. He's got the glasses on. He comes out in, pink and black. He's got the cool jacket and all this stuff. And then, seeing that, and then seeing him, seeing Stone Cold, battered and bloodied and not tapping out. Then he passed out. I was like, oh man, like that guy must be super tough to not tap out to this the submission hold, and then he just passes out. And I think like later on that year, I remember like the formation of the NWO. He was big into the WCW, so I started getting into the WCW, watching like the junior heavyweights or the cruiserweights.
Oh yeah.
And then Rey Mysterio Jr. Juventud Guerrera, Silver King, Psychosis, La Parka, all those. So I remember watching that style of wrestling, and with like Ultimo Dragon and Chris Jericho, and then I remember watching I think and then the formation of the NWO, like Chris had mentioned, and then kids at my school were like, you the red and black, or you the black and white, you the Wolfpack, and then I think it might have been the next year, 98, but whenever the LWO came out, I was just like hooked on that, because I thought, to me, NWO was cool, don't get me wrong, but the LWO was like that hard in my heart. And that was the coolest stuff like I'd ever seen, at that time when I was like 7 or 8. And then of course, like later on in the year, I think I'm trying to think. Had that Halloween Havoc match with Eddie Guerrero and Mysterio.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Great match.
Yeah. And then I remember being, coming home from church, and then I watched, I think it was in 98, whenever, the end of 98, I think, whenever Undertaker and Stone Cold had their match, and the Undertaker crucified Stone Cold.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, well, this wrestling stuff's for me. So, so, but just kind of through that, and just watching it consistently, watching the Monday Night Wars, Nitro, and eventually Thunder, and then Raw, and then SmackDown, like Chris had mentioned, renting the video games from Blockbuster or Hastings and playing those with my younger brother. Yeah. And then, and just kind of really getting heavily into it. And I think that like I had stayed consistently from 96 or 97 till probably about 2016. And then I think, or 2006, 2006, right around whenever CM Punk was like on his rise. And then about that time I stopped watching, just because things happen in your life, you're a teenager, you kind of want to do other things than watch wrestling. So I was out of it for probably about 5 years, and then slowly got back into it. I remember Cody had mentioned, or had invited me and another friend of ours, DJ, over for a WrestleMania. I forgot which one it was, and just kind of, but like Cody had mentioned, is I myself, I'm not a huge fan of modern wrestling. I do love all the old school stuff, the Bunkhouse Stampede matches with, Dusty Rhodes, the first War Games, a lot of stuff with like like Harlem Heat when they were kind of first breaking in. I think that was on a Global Wrestling Federation. So so just a lot of that kind of like old school stuff, where I appreciated, and watching promos on YouTube with like the Iron Sheik and Jim Cornette and the Midnight, and just really having an affinity for a lot of the kind of old school stuff. And then kind of, nowadays I think like I like of course all the old stuff, but like, still a fan of CM Punk to some degree, like Bryan Danielson, even like I didn't like John Cena for like the longest time. And then now, very, very, very recently, like within the last like 2 years, I kind of thought like, you know what, he's all right, and I think like I'm not ashamed to say that my mom bought me that You Can't See Me, the John Cena's rap album.
Oh, I do, yeah.
I still to this day own that album.
I don't know what mine
Yeah.
is, but it was so good. I liked it. I'm gonna lie. It was good. It was good.
Yeah. So, and I think like, and just most recently, I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and he went to Starcast in Chicago. So he was actually there for the Collision. I think that was when Tony Khan, announced that CM Punk doesn't work for AEW anymore. But he was actually at the convention, and he met Demolition and Adam Cole, Luchasaurus, and all those guys and stuff. So wasn't really like me. He's kind of like not really into modern wrestling. He actually went with a friend, but he's in his 40s, so he remembers Demolition more than I do. So
Oh
he
yeah.
was really excited about getting pictures with those guys and stuff. Yeah. So, but I think that's kind of for me. So I'll still watch matches every now and then, or something, a cool segment and stuff pops up. I'll watch it, or watch a promo and stuff. But I think like deep down inside, I will always like have an affinity and love for pro wrestling. I think that I'm a bit like old school in the way that like I look at it like a sport, and I know that anyone that I talk to that's not a wrestling fan, and I'm sure you guys can, they'll say, oh, it's fake, or they'll say this and that. And I think that most people know it's a work. People in the territory days, most people knew it's a work. But it suspends your imagination. You can kind of get sucked into a storyline. You can get sucked into good guy versus bad guy. The good guy, the face. He's been screwed over by the Hills and the Federation. And then when is he ever going to get a shot? And then finally, there's that one day where he finally gets over, like Daniel Bryan Bryan Danielson against Triple H and the whatever the hell they were calling themselves. So and it's kind of like they finally get it. And I think that's what's the most beautiful thing about wrestling is whenever told properly, and then finally the good guy wins. Not always, but sometimes it happens. And
Yep.
very cool stuff. And I think that just kind of wrap up here for my portion. I'm also a huge fan of MMA. So but I think I was talking to these guys earlier, and I was going to told them I'll tell them this story. But I remember in like 2016, whenever Michael Bisping was fighting Dan Henderson for the rematch, and it was Dan Henderson's retirement fight, and I was a huge Dan Henderson fan, and he had knocked out Michael Bisping in the first fight, and I thought like, well, he's going to knock him out again. He's going to get the belt. He's going to retire. He's finally going to get his championship, UFC championship. And I was working at Mercy at the time, and this girl that I had worked with, I'm not going to say her name because don't want to embarrass her, but she said, hey, we should hang out sometime, all that stuff. So I said, oh, okay, cool. So exchange numbers, whatever. So then I think like later on that week, she had messaged me and said, hey, if you want to, I'd be really interested in coming and hanging out tonight. And I remember it was the same Saturday as that pay-per-view, the Michael Bisping, Dan Henderson 2. And I was like, I don't think I can do that because win his belts, finally. And she was like, she said, oh, she was like, okay then. And like never talked to me after that. And Dan Henderson actually ended up losing that fight. But I still maintain that I made the right decision. So there you go. But just kind of parlaying here. I know that you guys touched on it a little bit, but what's like what's one, I guess, like one match if there was a non-wrestling fan in your guys' life and they said, all right, you I have a little bit of time, recommend me one match to kind of get me into it. And I guess we'll start with Cody, then Ian, and then Chris, and kick it back to myself.
Okay. This is easy for me. I revisited it recently, actually, because of Terry Funk's passing. But I'm going to go with Terry Funk versus Ric Flair, the Great American Bash, 1989.
Ooh, great match. Great match.
It's old school in the sense that it was technically the 80s. It is that older style before wrestling had turned quite as sports entertainment as it is today, but it still has just enough of those modern elements that both of those guys helped pioneer that I think a modern viewer could still enjoy it. So to me, it's that perfect balance of old school and new school. So that's the one I would pick.
Oh, that makes my selection look like crap now. Thanks, Cody. In
Welcome.
all due respect, I guess one of the biggest ones that I wanted to, I guess, for the action and like get you on your edge of your seat was probably would be TLC 2 from WrestleMania 17, Edge and Christian versus the Hardys versus the Dudleys. That was just, I don't know, that just was the night that all 6 of those guys were told to just go out there and make a name for yourselves. And I would just, like they said, I forgot who said it in the interview, but they said, whoever had to follow that, good luck with that, because I'll tell you, that night, all 6 men were made that match, and it's still one of my favorite multi-man matches of all time.
Well, hell, okay. So for mine, I must say that it has to be the final match at the grandest stage of them all, WrestleMania 19, The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Oh, yeah,
Just
that was great. Man.
Everything about that match told the story, whether it was from the beginning all the way to the end. You were on the edge of your seat. And even the promo package leading up to it, it was just like, oh, everything that it had everything to it. It had the drama, it had the heat, it had the everything, literally. All that
In a lot
in
of
the kitchen
ways,
sink.
in a lot of ways, that was the culmination of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was. 2 of the biggest names in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, exactly.
Arguably, that is, anyway.
I think for me, with the match. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You're good.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I think for me, it was the match I mentioned earlier, but Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio Jr. at the 1997 Halloween Havoc, and I think like it had everything. It had drama. It had it had sportsmanship. It had technique. It was a new form of wrestling. If you're more familiar with the kind of like sportsmanship, collar and elbow style of wrestling, it was a new evolution of that. But it wasn't so much where it was the lucha style wrestling. But to me, it wasn't so much where it was it kind of it ruined it, you know what I mean? And I think like to me that really just kind of sucked me in, and I thought like I was just trying to formulate what I was watching, and
Oh, most definitely.
and to see Eddie Guerrero try to pull Rey Mysterio's mask off, and to see yeah, and I think like that match was like, okay, this is it, like this is what I want to invest my time into now and in the future. And I think like if someone wanted a more kind of toned down, just kind of collar and elbow, technical style of wrestling, probably I think Eddie Guerrero again. Eddie Guerrero is one of my favorite wrestlers. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
And I think Dean Malenko, the Guerrero Malenko Classic, as they call it. And I think like that match was, all of their matches in ECW were just, clean, and I really, really, made me learn to appreciate kind of the more technical style of wrestling, and of course, like Cody had mentioned, Flair and Funk, anything with like the midnight, especially, Jim Cornette, on ringside, screaming, and it's just really just all those generations of any generation of wrestling. There's like 1 or 2 matches that you can say like, all right, watch this. And I think like to kind of expand on it further is I tell people all the time like pro wrestling is a lot like a book or a movie is like, yeah, there's different genres of books. There's different genres of movies. There's comedy, there's drama, there's horror, there's, action adventure, and I think like if someone really looked into it, there's a match and a storyline for everybody. And I think like that's one of the more beautiful things about wrestling.
That's so true.
So I think this kind of transitioning here, what are some of your experiences with like watching live pro wrestling? I know that everyone here has watched live pro wrestling. Those experiences, I guess we'll start with Cody, Ian, and Chris, and then me as well.
Okay, and just to clarify, we're talking about being at the arena or live on pay-per-view?
In the arena or building.
I never did watch live wrestling all that much, not as much as you would expect considering how much I like it. Mostly what I've watched is indie shows. Like there have been groups that have come to this area. I mean, my wife has family that are indie wrestlers. So I've seen quite a bit more indie wrestling than I have, the major companies. But I think my best memory though is actually nothing to do with the wrestling, which it was good. It was the first show that I ever went to. Again, it was an indie show. I don't really remember any of the ones that were there, any of the people. I don't remember any of the names. But I do remember that my mom took me, and this was not too long after I got into wrestling. The reason that sticks with me, though, is that my mom had been a fan of wrestling when she was a teenager. She was a big fan of the Von Erichs. She liked the Missing Link and some other guys from the Dallas area. But she hadn't watched wrestling since then, since she was 18 or 19. So when I started watching, she actually started getting into it again because of me, and then became just as big of a fan as I was. And I remember when I was like 13, 14, she took me to this indie show, and I just thought that was really cool experiencing that with her, because when she had been the age I was then, she was into it, got out of it, and then now she was revisiting that love for professional wrestling with me. So my best memory of going to an actual live show isn't even the show itself, though it was a good show, but it was getting to experience that with my mom.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I've been to several WWE shows, and they were good. House shows were good. They were sometimes better than the Raw tapings itself. But as for me, my memory is also kind of not trying to piggyback off you or anything, Cody. But I went to an indie show a while back with my two older kids and one of my best friends, and just after like I said, there was a lot of good matches. The only thing was kind of bad was one of the hardcore matches didn't live up to the hype as much as I thought it would be, but that's neither here or there though. But just after the show, like getting to, like I said, the matches were good and everything, but like I said, between matches and like after the show and before the show, but mostly after the show, is I actually got to have a chance to, because some of the wrestlers stuck around and talked to people and getting like I said, picking the brains of one of the female wrestlers. I've been really following her stuff now because I don't know, she just has that aura about herself, of that she has kind of had the Sasha Banks boss feel about her, and also Dr. Britt Baker, the I know I'm good vibe. But I've been watching like more of her TikToks, and she'll put some of her videos up on her Facebook page and everything. I've been slowly becoming a fan of her work and just watching her. She's not more than probably about 5 foot tall, 5'1" at the tallest probably, but not. And I don't know, she probably is a heel, but I've been really watching her stuff, and I'm just after the show, just really getting to talk to her and just watch that. At the time, my daughter was wanted to be a pro wrestler, so I was just like, "Hey, would be a good interaction for my daughter to meet her." And my daughter talked to her for a little bit too. But I just became more fans of. Like I said, I'm still be a fan of the big companies and everything, but don't ever take those little indie companies for granted, because I'm telling you, they sometimes can produce the one of the greatest matches. Because I remember real quick, make this quick before giving it over to you, Chris, is that I remember watching in Ada when we had some of the company come here, and it was Ricochet when he was, I don't know if he was being Ricochet or King Puma, but anyway, he wrestled night. I was so he was just amazing, and now to watch him in WWE, it's just so cool, because I'm like, I remember him being in at that show, maybe 100 people, and now he's at these shows that are thousands and thousands of people. But I'm like, that's cool that he has take the time to still respect the stuff that he used to do. If you know what I mean.
Hell yeah. I mean, so with me, I've been to most of what I've been to live show wise. I've been indie shows, but like I've been to two different occasions of Raw. One of which was the Road to Royal Rumble, back in January of I can't remember the exact year, but it was when Finn Balor and Seth Rollins and that kind of feud was going on. But the main thing, I think Brock was champion at the time, because I remember he was sitting there on the ramp and I said, "You suck," and he looked at me and he said, "Oh yeah, is that right?"
Oh wow!
But just to have that interaction with him, even though he could have just blew me off, but he straight up looked at me and interacted with me, so that was kind of a cool experience. But as far as like from top to bottom, no match except for one, being that involves Scott Steiner. But it was Oaklamania 3 down in Ardmore. Every match that I saw was awesome. Whether it was the match between I don't want to say wrong names, so the only matches that I can think of off the top of my head were it was the third match that they had, but it was Juventud Guerrera versus Fuego del Sol.
Oh, Fuego!
Yes, and that match was literally it was high flying. It was entertaining. Like from finish to start, there was no dull moment about that match. Everything about it was awesome, and to see that match, just was awesome. And then later on, the main event was actually Johnny Revolution, or John Morrison, and Chavo Guerrero for the then it was called IWR, but it had been since changed to World Class Revolution.
Yeah.
But it was for the heavyweight title, and that night I actually got to meet both Chavo and John, and Juventud, and got to talk with them and pick their brain a little bit. And I even asked them a few questions because I'm at one point, like when I had the time, I was inspiring to become a wrestler. I was training, I was doing all the things I needed to do, and then life got in the way and stopped me there. But I still remember that night because it was such an amazing night to be able to meet so many awesome wrestlers that I had watched come up. John Morrison from Eminem back in the day. Chavo Guerrero from just with his being the star-studded family bloodline of Eddie. And then Juventud from back in the like Jesse said, it was just seeing him come from that small, tiny little fucking cruiserweight in WCW, and now here he is, freaking older but still moving exactly like he did. And I even got to Too Sweet Psycho Sid that night. But I guess that's it for me.
Well, Ian and I think we met that night when IWR was at the ECU Curdome.
Oh, yes, we did. That's where we met.
Yeah. So Scott Steiner wrestled that night. Tatanka, Ricochet, Trying to remember the other people, can't remember. But so no match specifically stuck out that night, but I remember just having an overall, great experience. There was also the World Class Wrestling Revolution, excuse me. So I remember both incarnations of IWR and the World Class as well. And I think most recently Majestic Championship Wrestling here locally in like Wowoka and Shawnee, Seminole area. Those guys are always, putting on better and better shows, so each time I watch a show with those guys, it gets better and better, and I think watching a guy named Clayton Bloodstone, the trophy hunter.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that guy is good, and seeing him from I wouldn't say the undercard, but seeing him, just wrestle live, and then each time I saw him, his promos got better, his wrestling got better, So if you guys listening, check him out, Clayton Bloodstone, he's on YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. So it was just some really cool stuff to watch, and of course, the only kind of major show that I've been to is I went with a friend of mine named Dakota. So he and I went to NXT when I was at the Criteria in Oklahoma City. So there was Damian Priest was there, Matt Riddle was there. Chris was supposed to be there. Street Profits were there. Adam Cole was there. Keith Lee was there. And actually, so it was Keith Lee and Adam Cole in the main event for the NXT title, and so there was a spot where Adam Cole springboards off of the I think the middle rope, and he's going to hit Keith Lee with a clothesline. So for anyone non-wrestling fans, springboard just essentially means you just bounce your off of the rope. So Adam Cole, jumped from off the middle rope, both feet planted on the rope, turned around to deliver a clothesline. Clothesline is essentially you stick your arm out, hit the guy with your arm. And Keith Lee countered that with a clothesline of his own. So he actually flipped Adam Cole over. They both kind of sold it, meaning they just kind of, laid there and pretended like, the move was highly effective, which I'm sure if you get
effective.
Exactly. So I'm sure if you get, clothesline in any aspect, it probably doesn't feel good. But anyways, so while they're both sitting there, it was dead quiet. And I yelled out loud, "Well, you still suck." And I couldn't see him, but I could see Keith Lee's body moving, like he was laughing. So I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. So, so I know he heard me because it was dead quiet in there. So if he ever listens to this, I didn't mean to say that. But anyways, so kind of as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to go ahead and we asked for questions before we, the last couple of days lead. So we didn't get any questions via email or Instagram or Facebook, which, by the way, you can always shoot us a question on our Facebook page. That's 3Ref on Instagram. That's 3Ref on Facebook. And then, of course, you can shoot us an email. That's 3ref@gmail.com. So get a hold of us that way. But I wanted to read this question from Trip Chris Gray. He said, "Where to listen to?" Well, you listen to it right now. Spotify, YouTube, just anywhere you can get your podcasts. Also, if y'all don't talk about the buddy pillows, then I don't know why you even have a podcast. Crying laughing emoji, crying laughing emoji, crying laughing emoji. Those pillows were everything. Ha 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 ha. So I imagine he laughed.
I hear that laugh. I hear his laugh because I know Chris.
Thanks, Trip Chris Gray, for your for your question. But so we'll go ahead and end there, and then we'll get out of here. What do you guys remember about the wrestling buddy pillows?
So we'll start with the. Never got one.
Okay.
I had so many of those. Like I was saying earlier in our little chat we have, I had literally I had the Wolfpack Kevin Nash, I had the Diamond Dallas Page, the Macho Man Randy Savage from the NWO era, and the Sting one. I those were everything. I always used to make them wrestle and elbow drop them and everything, and fucking.
Cody,
I'm here.
did you have
Never
a
had the
pal?
metal, but a buddy of mine did get me the Sting one recently.
Nice.
So, yes, as a 30-year-old adult, I finally got one.
I have to get one now too.
Well,
I wish I still had mine.
I think I had the Sting one. I can't either Sting or Goldberg, but I can't really remember. So, yeah, I don't know. It might have been a fever. One of them, I thought. But yeah. So, all right. So I think that will do it for the first ever episode of this illustrious podcast. So, and as I said at the top of the show, as we get further into this podcast, we'll do deep dives on like the European Championship and maybe Starrcade, 88, or the Bunkhouse Stampede match, or even do a year in wrestling like SmackDown 2006. Just get into the nitty and gritty. So we'll go ahead and announce, excuse me, the subject of that next podcast very soon. So please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can check us out on both of those socials. If you need to get a hold of us, again, you can shoot us a message on the Facebook page or the Instagram page. And you can also email us if social media is not your style. That's 3ref@gmail.com. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and plug my Instagram, and then I'll let everyone else plug their socials. Go ahead and bid you adieu. So again, I've been your neighborhood cosplaying goof, the Jesse White Deer. You can get a hold of me on Instagram at jwhitedeer on Instagram. So I post a lot of credible memes, I must say. So check me out there. And yeah, so I'll go ahead and pass it over to Cody.
Okay. I currently have no socials available, but there will be some coming soon.
Well, I'll go. You can find me on Facebook. You can look me up that way. I have Instagram. It's Ian_Cooper3512. Also, I do have TikTok. I don't make many as I do. I just follow people usually, but I will give you my handle as well on TikTok. My TikTok handle is the letters OK_Starth, which is Starth is spelled STARTH 3512. Once again, my TikTok handle is at OK_Starth STARTH 3512, or like I said, Instagram, or you can get a hold of me on Facebook, or if you know me, you know how to get a hold of me besides that way.
Well, hi. My bad. I messed that all up. But words, they're hard. But no, my name is Chris Lawson. You can find me on Facebook under Chris Lawson. I do have a Instagram. You can look me up as the fragmented_luchador. I have a Twitter, but I don't really use it. I usually just look up wrestling facts and stuff like that. But it is also Fragmented Luchador, but I think it is spelled FRGMNTD_L or Luchador. And then if you want to, you don't have to. I usually just post on there when I'm bored, but I do have a TikTok, and it is also FRGMNTD_Luchador, and that is my current socials that I use on a fairly decent basis.
You also have a band, correct?
Oh, that is right. That is right. They don't call me the Fragmented Luchador for nothing. You see, I do play in a band. It is called Fragmented Tranquility, whereas I deem the role of the Fragmented Luchador, hence the name, where I play bass and I do backup vocals.
Very cool. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining the first episode of That's 3Ref, a wrestling podcast. I have been the Jesse White Deer. They have been Cody Baggerly, Ian Cooper, and of course, as always, the immortal, fragmented luchador, Chris Lawson, everybody. So thank you for sticking around, and you can hear from us very, very soon. But until then, be safe, everybody. Treat yourself well. Treat other people well. And yeah, I don't know. Do something nice for yourself in between now and then. Why not?
Bye.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you later. Goodbye.